Zion Williamson has some shocking comments following last night's game as he's possibly planting some seeds that he might be looking at the Celtics for the future. We'll be looking at Zion Williamson's comments and diving in and looking at how this makes sense for the Boston Celtics. And we'll also be looking at, additionally, Joe Mazzulla's comments following last night's comeback win, looking at how Joe Mazzulla wants some changes with this Celtics roster. All of that and more on this episode of Celtics Digest. I'm Bruce Veliz. But before we dive into this Boston Celtics content and coverage, I'd like to say that 78.7% of our viewers are not subscribed and would greatly appreciate it if you hit that big old red subscribe button and helped us get to our goal of 4,000 subscribers here on Celtics Digest. We upload daily Celtics content, so if you want to stay up to date, hit that subscribe button. But let's dive into the news at hand today. Make sure to grab a snack as today's episode is going to be a jam-packed one. The first topic that we're going to be discussing is Zion to Boston. And I know that this is a little bit of a rumor possibly, but Zion has spoken out after this game last night and has some kind words to say about the Boston Celtics and Boston as a whole. If we want to look at this, Zion on playing in Boston said it's dope. We were talking about it before the game. This is a dope blank arena. Playing here and their fan base show them a lot of love. Your basketball blood can't help but come out. And he said, Zion to Boston soon. Now I know this is just shocking comments coming out of Zion Williamson, and the likelihood of Zion Williamson landing with the Boston Celtics is very unlikely. But it is always a possibility, especially with how Zion Williamson's contract is structured for the future. If you guys want to look at Zion Williamson, you guys can see that he has his deal this year. But if you want to look in the future, next year's partially guaranteed, and the 3 years after that are non-guaranteed money. Now you may be asking yourself a question on why Zion Williams' contract is set up like that, and that is due to his injury history during his rookie deal and how the Pelicans wanted to structure his contract for the future. And if we look at this article, we can see that during the season, Mike Vorkunovs of The Athletic reported that the final 3 years of Zion Williamson's contract are no longer guaranteed because he missed more than 22 games last season. That means that the Pelicans could waive Williamson after the 24-25 season, and he would be left with no dead cap hit. However, the contract also has ways for Williamson to earn back the guarantees by playing in enough games and hitting specific weigh-in checkpoints. So this contract is very, very confusing in the ways that it's set up and how Zion Williamson would be accessible to get to the Boston Celtics. But if he is on his normal contract that he is now at around $34 million, the Celtics could find a possible way to land Zion Williamson. Now, I'm not saying this is a guarantee that Zion Williamson will be a Celtic in the future, but the team could look at potential trade avenues to go out and get a guy like Zion Williamson. There's possibilities of a Jaylen Brown swap in the future. We've always heard the rumors of possibly Jaylen Brown being on the move. If this team can't constructively win a championship in the next couple years, could that be a move that the Celtics look to make after they've already moved some of their intangible pieces along the way? Or could they move a guy like Jrue Holiday or even a guy like Kristaps Porzingis to get a guy like Zion Williamson? Honestly, the options are endless for the Boston Celtics. Do I think that Zion Williamson will end up in a green Celtics jersey? No, I do not. But do I think that there's a possibility that he could and he does appreciate the city of Boston? Of course there is. And especially if he's on a non-guaranteed contract, if he is to keep this weight and how things are going, it's possible that the Pelicans could waive him and the Boston Celtics could secure a guy like Zion Williamson if he's, a little bit more injury prone or a little bit bigger on weight for a nicer contract that fits their roster by picking him up in free agency. There's a lot of avenues depending on how Zion Williamson treats himself in the next couple of years, and that is the determined X factor of how Zion Williamson could possibly end up on this team. But let's look at the other news at hand today, discussing how Joe Mazzulla speaks up. And Joe Mazzulla was very vocal after last night's game versus the New Orleans Pelicans, having a great press conference, and a lot of fans were very, very ecstatic from what Joe had to say. But I found this little quote and this little piece from Noah Dalzell here, which I'm going to bring up, talking about how Joe Mazzulla on the Celtics overcoming a 17-point deficit. He said, I just hope it happens 10 to 12 more times so we can get rid of the entitlement that we're always supposed to be winning. I hope we have to blow leads. I hope all that happens. I really do. Now, coming from Joe Mazzulla, this is crazy because a lot of the Celtics fans and Celtics people expect the Celtics to win every single game, and the Celtics can be competing in every single one of these games. And the Celtics can't do that every single night. They're not robots. They're not perfect humans. They're going to have off shooting nights. Some nights they're going to have injuries. Some nights there's going to be mismatches as well. And then there are going to be a lot of obstacles for this team to overcome. Like I mentioned, the Celtics overcame a 17-point deficit to the Pelicans. That was their second biggest deficit that they overcame this season. Their biggest was 22 points to the Detroit Pistons, in which it looked like the Detroit Pistons were going to be able to snap that losing win streak versus the Celtics, but the Celtics ultimately prevailed. Now, obviously, Joe Mazzulla doesn't want the Celtics to be out of all of these games entirely, but he desperately wants to see some changes with this team and how they structure themselves. He doesn't want them to feel confident that they're going to win every single game that they're going into, and they want them to be focused on making changes and running on the fly. Obviously, versus this New Orleans Pelicans team, they were down 17 at halftime. They had to make adjustments. They weren't hitting their three-pointer shots. They were kicking a lot of them out, missing a lot of them. In the third quarter, they opened up attacking the rim with ease and trying to fight back with that. Jaylen Brown was a little bit in more possession of the ball. Jrue Holiday was. And their main rhythm was to attack the rim and try to dominate in that aspect. Obviously, Joe Mazzulla, being one of the coaches that I personally really like, but a lot of Celtics fans are a little iffy on. Let me know your guys' thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below about Joe Mazzulla. A lot of people don't like about his timeouts. A lot of people are, hesitant on just how he runs basketball, the Mazzulla ball way. But honestly, I really want to give credit to the guy in Joe Mazzulla. He's done terrific with this Celtics team. He's, brought them from this point where they were in the Eastern Conference Finals, 2 games away from winning the finals, to being back in that game on a shortened season with a no head coaching staff that was his, automatically just thrown into that. He brought those guys back to where they wanted to be, and even though they didn't get to the finals, they were 1 game away. This season, with his whole new coaching staff, bringing in Sam Cassell, bringing in Charles Lee, getting his whole thing set up, he's led this Boston Celtics team to the best record in the NBA and the best record in the Eastern Conference. Obviously, you want to respect the players. The Celtics have the best starting 5, but Joe Mazzulla is also doing his work for this team as well. So personally, I'm very, very excited to see what Joe Mazzulla can cook up in these changes and helping make the Celtics team get better, as obviously he wants this to happen. He doesn't want the Celtics to, feel comfortable in their shoes going up against some bad teams or against some good teams. He always wants to make sure that they're ready to spark some changes and make sure to pick up their style of play if it is desperately necessary. Obviously, the Boston Celtics have another game tonight as they take on the Indiana Pacers in their second games of the back-to-back, which will be a very exciting one for the Boston Celtics. We'll get to see Pascal Siakam come to Boston in his new Indiana Pacers uniform. Will he be able to escape the Boston Celtics fans and the Boston Celtics atmosphere, or the Celtics get the best of him again? We'll have to wait and see. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this episode of Celtics Digest. I'm Bruce Veliz, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out.